Joining us now, Daniel Gade. Daniel is running for the U.S. Senate. He first has to be the Republican nominee. That was supposed to be decided in a primary on June 9th, but Ralph Northam, the governor, has kept the shutdown order in place until June 10th, which is the day after the primary, and the candidates have to be certified on June 9th. So that sounds kind of weird, why he did that. I think it's the Elaine Lawyer Protection Act, but that's just me. We'll see how that goes. But meantime, Daniel Gade, the favorite, now to be the nominee to take on Mark Warner, but he doesn't know how he's going to get nominated. Same thing we had with Nick Freitas, and he's joining us now. Hey, Daniel, great to have you.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it very much.
So let's start with the nominating process. The governor making June 10th the stay-at-home date, and he could change that. It could lift it earlier, but what does that mean for you?
Well, I don't think it means anything, actually, because the governor later modified or clarified his order and said that voting is considered an essential government function. So it sounds, at least initially, like all the polling places are going to be open and we're going to just do regular in-person voting. But here's the problem, John, as you well know. A lot of the volunteers and these sort of one-day paid staffers that man or that staff polling places are elderly, right? And so if coronavirus is still raging, which it may well be at that point, there's a real danger that we're going to put those folks at risk. So, what we're doing right now is I'm preparing people for the idea of this being absentee ballot only. And I'm not thrilled by that. As you described, there's lots of opportunities for shenanigans there, but I think what we're going to see is maybe a mix, more absentee ballots than usual, but not full absentee voting. But the primary is still on June 9th, and I'm going to win it, and then I'm going to take on Mark Warner.
Well, look, I think you're doing the right thing. I mean, absentee ballots, it could end up going to that. So you should encourage your supporters definitely to vote absentee because that ensures they'll have a vote. I just want to caution people, though, that with Virginia law, and it's the law in almost every state, if you ask for an absentee ballot, you can't throw it out and say, well, it's changed now, I'll just go vote and show up at the polling place. Because if you're logged in as having an absentee ballot, you can't vote in person. So that's I just want to put that word out there so people understand you can only do one or the other. And a lot of people think, well, I'll get the absentee ballot, and if I don't need it, I'll just throw it out. No, that's not the way it works, Daniel.
Right. And that's a real danger. I mean, honestly, this primary, because of the coronavirus, is going to be probably exceptionally low turnout. And that, for the primary, that favors me, actually, because my campaign is the best organized. We've got the most paid, we've got great paid staff, exceptional volunteers around the Commonwealth. So I think I'm going to be fine. But yeah, I mean, we're all watching the situation very closely, of course.
If you were in the Senate right now, would you have voted for the $2.2 trillion bailout package?
Yes, but here's the problem, John, is that when a whale is going through the ocean, it picks up a lot of barnacles. And the problem here is that this thing, as it was going through, it was a whale. It had to pass because there's a couple things in there that really do matter. But it picked up a whole bunch of barnacles that really turned my stomach. I mean, the Kennedy Center bailout is absurd. I think that the relief checks should be targeted to people who've actually lost jobs instead of just to every old body. When a 250 millionaire like Mark Warner gets a whatever couple $1,000 check from the government as part of the bailout, that's an indication that maybe the aid isn't targeted to people who are really suffering, like blue collar workers, like the servers at restaurants. I was talking to a friend of mine who runs a couple of restaurants in Virginia Beach and then some other businesses, and he had 3-4 weeks ago he had 250 employees, and now he's down to like 18 and falling. And the reason,
look, it's the truth.
So those people are really suffering.
I just want to correct one thing. Mark Warner will not get a check. He earns $179,000 as a U.S. Senator, so therefore he will not be eligible for the $1,200. So I just wanted to be clear on that, Daniel. But look, you're right. Look, it wasn't the perfect bill, but I think both of us would have voted for it. We had to do something. Now they're talking about Phase 5 or something, another phase bill that focuses on infrastructure, shovel-ready jobs. That hasn't come up yet, but everybody's saying that it will. What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, John, this is, again, Daniel Gade, running for U.S. Senate on Facebook, @Gade for Virginia. So the issue here is that just because we have a national emergency does not give our political class the right to just keep hitting the ATM again and again and again. And as a fiscal conservative, as somebody who believes in balanced budgets and a constrained, limited government, I'm deeply worried about the idea that we're just going to, now that we've done it once, we're just going to keep doing it. That's really scary because there's all kinds of shenanigans that could occur or will occur in that kind of regime. So I want to see what's in this bill before I'd say that I'd support it. And I definitely support the idea of making people be accountable for their votes. No more voice votes on this. Let's start putting people on record for the way they vote.
Let me ask you something. Are you at all concerned with the stay-at-home orders by these governors? Daniel Gade with us. Daniel, are you at all concerned about the restrictions on individual liberty and what long-term ramifications this may have? Let me just give you an example. Yesterday, the San Diego Sheriff's Department was giving out citations to people who have committed the nefarious crime of watching the sunset on the beach, even though they were 6 feet from each other. At around the same time in Pennsylvania, state police were pulling over and ticketing a woman who they said was going for a drive. She didn't have a good enough answer to where she was going. In Minnesota, they actually have, they've set up now checkers where cars are just being stopped randomly, being asked where they're going. If they cannot convince the officer of the legitimacy of the drive, they're handcuffed. Are you at all concerned about the precedent this is setting here?
Well, not just concerned, John, horrified. There was another one I saw yesterday where some police department has drones with little speakers on them, and they're like flying up to people who are walking down the sidewalk saying, keep your social distance, get away from each other. And I'm looking into the future and saying, this is how a totalitarian state really gets its roots. And I saw another story yesterday where some doctors were proposing that we all get, after we get tested for coronavirus, we get a green wristband, and then that allows us to go into public, to the grocery store and things. And if you don't have a green wristband, you don't get to go into public, and it fades to red over time, and then you get to get retested and then go back and get your green wristband renewed. And I'm looking at this, and I don't want to be a tinfoil hat person, and I'm not one. But when you look at that, you're saying, oh my gosh, I think we've seen this movie before, actually in movies and maybe actually in like the Bible. This is some creepiness here. So I'm a pro individual liberty person. I think that we ought to be willing to sacrifice some individual liberty for the temporary restrictions due to this particular national emergency. But if this starts to roll over into police state tactics and so forth around the country, as it appears to be in some places, then I'm deeply, deeply concerned about that.
Well, Daniel, look, I've been saying this since this whole thing started, these shutdowns and lockdowns and police surveillance and everything else, since this virus has spiked. Always easier the second time. And the level of Americans who are willing to comply with this and rat each other out, because now various cities and states have rat lines where you tattle on your neighbor. There's an app that came out where you can actually go on your app in certain areas and say that your neighbor has walked their dog 3 times today. It's insanity what is going on out there. But look, we're going to get through this. I'm concerned about the second time and then the third time. And each time it gets easier. And, if you look at any totalitarian state, like you said, Daniel Gade, it all started with the government taking your rights away and saying, we have to do this to do what? Keep you safe. We will keep you safe. You'll have to give us your rights, but you know what? You'll be safe. Like Vladimir Lenin said, right? Peace, bread, land. We will keep you safe. You have no rights, but you'll have peace, bread, and land, because you didn't get the peace or the bread or the land, and they took all your liberties away. So, I don't know. I think this is a discussion, Daniel, as somebody running for the U.S. Senate, you have to have.
That's right. And you want people who are running for these positions who are deeply skeptical of government, as I am. Just last summer, there was a beach umbrella, as you probably remember, that blew loose and killed a woman at Virginia Beach. And both Mark Warner and Tim Kaine's response to that was to demand more government intervention to regulate beach umbrellas. And so these are not people who are skeptical of government power. I am deeply skeptical of government power, and I think that makes me better qualified to wield government power than somebody who's just a yes man to the idea of expansion of government.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are chatting with Daniel Gade. He is one of several candidates running for the nomination, the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Virginia to take on Mark Warner in November. That right now is scheduled to be decided in a June 9th primary, and it's an open primary, and there's no activity on the Democratic side. We are with Daniel Gade. He is running for the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Virginia. He wants to take on Mark Warner. He is the overwhelming favorite right now to be the nominee in our judgment. Carol, let's get the cut for Senator Lindsey Graham saying that the world should send China a bill for this pandemic, and then we'll get Daniel Gade's take. Cut for.
Makes sense to me. If it were up to me, the whole world should send China a bill for the pandemic. This is the third pandemic to come out of China. They come from these wet markets where they have bats and monkeys with the virus, carrying the virus, intermingled with the food supply. Yeah, I'd make China pay big time. And here's the question for 2020. Who do you want to take on China, Trump or Joe Biden? I don't think that would be a hard decision for most people.
Daniel Gade, if you were in the Senate right now, is this something you would want to take on?
Yeah, I don't really know what he means when he says send a bill to China. I mean, like, okay, what are they going to do with that? I think they're going to circular file it, just like if somebody with no authority over you sent you a bill, you just throw it away. So yeah. I'm not sure what Senator Graham's talking there, but he is right about the fact that that President Trump was right on China when he did the travel restrictions at the end of January. He was right on that. Everybody made fun of him, called him racist, et cetera, of course, like they always do, but he was right on it. And, if you look at Joe Biden's bumbling performance over the last couple of months, you got to say, oh, my gosh, you can't have that guy taking on crisis like this. So obviously Trump is the right guy to get reelected. I'm happy to be I was a political appointee of President Trump, so not only do I support him, he supports me. And I'm ready for this. I'm ready to run alongside him. Now, I'm not running to be a Trump nominee, right? I'm not running to be a Trump appointee. I'm running to be in a separate part of government from the president. But when he's right, I'll tell him he's right. When he's wrong, I'll tell him he's wrong.
All right, Daniel Gade. Well, that's a fair assessment of what you're doing. If people want more information on your campaign, which, look, I think you're the overwhelming favorite for the nominee. I think you win the primary. If there is one, if it's put off, I think you'll win that. So I think you're the favorite to win that. But then you're also a huge underdog against Mark Warner. He's very well funded. He's got a lot of money. He's got the Democratic Party of Virginia behind him. They've got a major operation. So you come in here as a very significant underdog. But, look, I said this in 2014, and he beat Ed Gillespie by 1%, who was a dreadful candidate. So you never know what's going to happen, Daniel. You never know.
Yeah, that's right. And yes, I'm the underdog, but so what? I'm ready for this fight. I think Virginia has changed since November of 2019, and people are finally awake. And Mark Warner's name ID is like 40%, so it's not like he's starting out that far ahead in that way.
All right, I got to roll. What's your website?
The Facebook is at Gade for Virginia, GADEFOR Virginia, and then the website is gadeforvirginia.com, GADEFOR Virginia.com.
Thank you, Daniel Gade.